Hello everyone and welcome to our session, A Framework for Developing Online Tests. My name is Rosario Giraldez and I am the Academic Director at Alianza Cultural Uruguay, Estados Unidos.
My name is Dieste and I am the Associate Academic Director.
Okay, we are really grateful to the Regional English Language Office for organizing this re-evolution event that allows us to share best practices. And to start, let us share some information about our setting, okay? We are located in Uruguay, as you can see in the map, and we are a network of 36 centers distributed all over the country. The headquarters are in Montevideo, and we teach mainly ESL programs. We also teach a teacher education program and some other short careers. And we would like to share with you our framework and how we conceived this framework for developing online tests.
So just to give you an idea of and some background information about our testing program, we conduct formal evaluation in all our courses. In order to conduct that sort of evaluation, what we do is we have in-house test development, and we conduct training for our teachers and also for test designers. We also revise from the headquarters the test results for all the country, because what we do is we provide the tests for every course in every franchise. And we also keep in mind the cornerstones of testing when we are designing tests and when we are considering our testing program. So when we started with our blended program and we started teaching in a blended modality, we decided to reconsider our tests and we started with a blended modality for our tests. And of course, this is very relevant this year specifically, in which we all had to turn into virtual teaching and into online teaching for all of our programs and not only the blended programs.
So let's talk a little bit about the cornerstones of testing, and very two important characteristics of this is test validity and test reliability. And validity refers to the extent to which a test measures what it says it will measure, okay? So in Christine Kuhn's words, test what you teach, how you teach it, okay? So a test will be valid if what we are proposing in the test is what students know because you taught that content, okay? And the other characteristic is reliability, which refers to the consistency of test scores, and it means that a test will give similar results if it were given at another time or if it were corrected by different raters, okay? And factors that may reduce or affect reliability, so it could show fluctuations in reliability, could be pertaining to the learner or the scoring itself or the test administration. So we have to consider how the learner is feeling and if we are providing a good setting for the learner so that the scores will not be affected.
And as we mentioned, as we have 36 branches, it's very important for us that validity and reliability can be taken into account in both testing design and also test administration. So as I said, we started with this new modality of testing when we started with our blended courses. Our blended courses, just to give you an idea, have 50% online and 50% on ground and in-person classes every week. And this year that changed a bit and we started with everything online, but we kept the 50% synchronous and 50% asynchronous work for students. And when we considered test development for those courses, we also considered 50% on paper and 50% online. What we changed this year is that the 50% on paper testing was synchronous and in the same time as the class, and the 50% online was asynchronous, the same way as we had done in previous years. But again, we kept the same modality in which we were teaching our students to assess our students and to conduct formal evaluation. As we mentioned before, our formal evaluation is conducted and designed by teachers with the proper training, and of course, our summative evaluation and our formative evaluation is conducted by teachers also, but it's on an ongoing basis.
Okay, and so let's look a little bit at the procedure that we follow when designing the tests, okay? In the first place, we establish the purpose of the test by defining the test construct. So we have to write specifically what we are going to measure, okay? Then we revise the inventory of the contents and materials that we have for test design in order to see if we can reuse or adapt some of the content that is already in our site. We write test specifications, and we use the word specs in order to refer to them, so that we give the designers a clear picture of what they need to come up with. And we create a test blueprint, which is the map of the test, okay? So the blueprint will provide the designer an exact idea of what the test will look like. It's like having a map which they will have to recognize, but then add the content to it. It will be like tracing all those lines and filling them with content and colors, all right? And well, Victoria will give you the rest of the procedure.
And of course, we also define the areas to be tested. And at the beginning, when we first started with this new modality for our assessment program, we decided to leave speaking area aside for the first year. And luckily this year, we were able to incorporate it into the online testing. And that was a great asset for both teachers and students, but we'll get into that in a second. So the first thing would be to define which are those areas that you want to test. Of course, we also need to select the number of tasks, and that will have to do with how much time the students will have allocated, and we'll talk a little bit about time later on, and how that is very important for online testing. And the relative weight for each of the items in the test and each of the areas that we are testing. Of course, those will have to keep close relation to the teaching and the weight that each area and each item will have in our tests. We also need to keep in mind the question types, and for that we need to see what is available in the different tools that we are using for testing, and to make sure that the question types are known by students and are the ones that they are used to see in teaching. And of course, as we said before, bear in mind the cornerstones of testing and how those impact our test design and our test administration.
Okay, so just to share general guidelines on test designs, we have a list of questions that will serve the purpose of a checklist for designers. Okay, so the first question that we have is the item format correctly matched to the purpose and content of the item? Because sometimes we may have an idea in mind, but the format does not match the content or the purpose of what we are trying to assess. Another question would be, is there only one correct answer? Many times as we are writing the items, we think that, okay, this is the correct answer, and we provide some distractors. But if we look into them, we may realize that there may be more than one distractor. So it's really important that we look at them carefully and that we proofread all the items. Another question is the item written at the student's level of proficiency? So we have to really be very careful if we're assessing intermediate students to be testing at the intermediate level. And the same with other levels. At the A2 level, we cannot be using items that will be more suitable for A1 students. So we need to look at our inventory of test questions and answers in order to be sure that we are assessing at the right level of students' proficiency. Then another question would be, have negatives and double negatives been avoided? And why is that? Because negatives may be confusing. You write a negative statement which should be true, but because it's negative, sometimes the answer that first pops up into the student's mind is, oh, that's false, because it's negative. So they may be confusing, and we should avoid them. One more question would be, are all parts of the item on the same page? Why is that? If we are looking at one page, okay, even if it is online, we do not want to have the reading on one side and then students have to move to another screen and to look for the questions or the true false or the multiple choice activity. Everything should be on the same page, okay? Another important question is, have race, gender, and nationality bias been avoided, okay? When teaching EFL, maybe nationality is not that relevant, but in the global world we are living in, well, they all become relevant, okay? And so we need to avoid any bias that may arise. And finally, another question would be, has at least one other colleague looked over the items? So has the test and have all the questions and answers been proofread? It's very important to have a view with fresh eyes, somebody who has never seen this test, look at it and tell us, yes, it is assessing the right level, and yes, these questions are valid, do not contain any bias, or are not focused on specific gender or race issues, okay? And they are clear, they have only one possible answer, okay?
So keeping all these in mind, we also need to consider which are the tools that we finally use for our online testing. And I'm saying keeping all it in mind because there are a diverse variety of tools that we can choose from. What we consider the most important is to for those tools to reflect the way we are teaching. Especially if we are teaching online, we want to test online, but we also want to use the same tools that we use for teaching. In our case, that was pretty easy because we use an LMS, we use Moodle, and we've been using Moodle for a very long time. And Moodle offers a great variety of possibilities for testing, and the activities and the quizzes that they provide and the settings they provide were more than enough for us. If you are not using any LMS, you might consider, for example, Google Forms or other tools that might serve the purpose. But in that case, we would need to make sure that students are trained for the testing instance. All of these tools have different advantages and disadvantages. The most important is to keep in mind what's your objective when assessing those students, and making sure that you can respect everything that Rosario was mentioning with the tool that you choose.
Okay, well, let's share now some tips for students, okay? And it's very important that students have the idea what the test will be like before the test, before they take the actual test. So, students should be trained beforehand. You can conduct mock tests, for example, in order for students to be familiar with the mechanics of the test and for them to check the settings that they will need to have in order to do well on the test and to be successful, okay? And also after the test, for collecting and processing information for us is very important, and students should know that we will be able to have all their answers, okay, that nothing is lost, and that the feedback that we collect will be used for test improvement, okay?
And in order to use all that information, in our case that we use Moodle, we can analyze all the information throughout the country from every student, because Moodle allows us to do so. So the analysis of the results, it's much easier than when we had paper-based tests. And when we consider the different tools, as we said before, using Moodle, in our case that is the same tool that we're using for teaching, still required for us to do some training and some checking from the part of the students and from the part of the teachers. We need to make sure that when tests are set, students know exactly what they have to do, and teachers know exactly what they have to do as well. For the checking of the system by the students, what we did is we created a test, exactly as a quiz in our case in Moodle, exactly the same as what we would have the day of the test, with the same instructions, with the same timers, the same specifications, and we had students take this system requirements check so that they had a feeling of what they would find the day of the test. Of course, that if you're using a different tool, then aside from a mock requirement check systems check test, you will also have to conduct mock tests, as Rosario was saying. So this will not be sufficient. If you're using the same tools, then it would be much easier, and then you can avoid the use of mock tests. We believe that students shouldn't be trained for the test unless they are using a different tool, because then what is that you're testing if your students need so much training? So what we try to do is keep it only for as a mock, so that students feel relaxed and they feel at ease before taking the test.
Yeah, so that the test is valid and we are teaching what we are testing, and we are testing what we are teaching. Okay?
Exactly.
We really do not foster teaching to the test, okay? What we want to do is to teach so that students learn.
Exactly. And just to give you some ideas of things that we have to keep in mind in order to have a valid and reliable online test, we need to consider things as the instructions that students would receive. Most of our online testing for our blended program, as I described before, is asynchronous. And in order to do so, students have to be ready and have all the instructions that they need to have before taking the test. Why before? Because actually when they start the attempt, then time is going to become relevant. So we don't want students to waste their time, which is limited. And one of the reasons for limiting the time, of course, is security. And there's a huge discussion nowadays about security and safety in well, both in internet, but also in testing and in online testing, on what if students are cheating, or what if students are not themselves the ones that are taking the test. We believe that, of course, security is important. We try to add some elements as controlling the time, as having only one attempt, as setting a specific date and a specific time for students to take tests. But at the same time, we also consider things as, okay, what if students are using a spell check for the writing section of the test? Well, we believe that that's pretty awesome. We all use spell checkers for our writing. So of course we will demand more from those students, because they can use a spell check or they can use something as Grammarly. Of course we will ask for more, but we are allowing them to edit the writing. As we are also limiting the time, it's not that somebody else can write it for them. But yes, they can use the same tools, as we said, as they use in their classes. Okay, we also, as you can see in this image, have students navigate the test. They can go back and forth if they want to. The last section is writing, and as you can see there, the student has control of how much time they have left throughout the test, but they can also keep going forward and then go back and check the answers that they had previously given. And we use, as I said, Moodle quizzes, which allows us to have the different sections of the test in different activities, or as we usually do, one quiz for all the test, all the tests, so that students can, as I said, go back and forth. We believe that resembles more the way that we usually do also paper-based tests. So that's the way we chose for this particular reason. And finally, the sample test reports, as Rosario was saying today, we can analyze the results of the tests, and we can analyze the results of the test for every course, every group, and every student throughout the country. And this is something that teachers can see. I mean, they love the idea of having all the results and the reports that Moodle brings. They have graphs. They can know exactly in which item those students, if there's an item, for example, that most of the students did poorly in, and they have to revise something, and they have to maybe even reteach some concepts, and that gives us a lot of information to process and to analyze.
For those interested in research, this is fantastic, okay? Being able to, look at the numbers and analyze what item was really a little bit confusing, or if all students could not get the right answer, well, probably the item is the problem, okay? Well, let's go into some advantages of online testing. So there are many, but maybe just to mention a few. If we focus on teachers, we can say that test validity and reliability are considered, and even though they may be considered further in online testing, okay? Also, speed testing, which is really useful to ensure security, it's very easy to implement in online testing, because once the time is up, the window is closed and students can continue working. Another thing that teachers love is that there is automatic correction of objective items, so they don't need to go into each of them to say what's right and what's wrong. They get the answers corrected, and so also the risk of making mistakes when correcting is minimized. And of course the reports, okay? Test reports automatically are automatically processed, and they are at your hands, just a click away, for conducting analysis and research.
One thing that we might also say about security is that this presentation is based on the experience that we have with our students, and we're not talking here about international examinations or examinations from candidates that are not our students. These are our students. We know them. They know our rules. They know our expectations. So when we consider security, we also keep that in mind and have that in mind. And if we were to consider candidates from abroad or international certification, of course that we would use other type of tools that allow for, and we do for candidates that are not our students, and we consider other measures to take as the students are taking the tests. Of course, taking the test synchronously, but also proctoring online, and a lot more division in the areas that we need to teach in order to that we need to test in order to keep a close eye on what students are doing. And in order to do that too, Moodle allows. They don't only give you a report on the correct or incorrect items, but they also give you a report on every click that students take. So that allows to see exactly where the student is at all times. So we also can see some advantages for students. For example, it fosters a lot learner autonomy and accountability. We train our students to be successful online students. So testing needs to be part of that, and in a way it promotes the autonomy on students, and students also take more responsibility on their own learning. We also have the possibility for students to choose the best place and time to take the test, and depending on the test, students can even choose what the best time of day would be for them to take the test, and that gives them a lot of freedom in being able to prepare a room without distractions and without anybody bothering them, and we of course let them know with a lot of time in advance for them to be able to say to their families, stay away, I need my time, I need to prepare myself for this test, and have the perfect environment to take the test. That is of course connected to the listening, especially to the listening section of tests, and to have the perfect conditions in order to take that. And also writing, it's neat, it's clear, as I said today, they could use, and we make that evident for them, and we tell them that they can use any of the tools that we are using in class to make sure that the writing is as good as it can be.
And let us share with you that the feedback that we have received from students regarding online testing has been mainly positive, and they value the fact that they can take the test in the place they can choose, with the conditions that Victoria was mentioning, and the results also. We have compared results from online testing with in-person testing from previous years, and the results are pretty much similar, so that means that we are happy to say that we are on the right track. Well, we would like to thank you for attending our presentation, and if you have any questions, we will be glad to answer them. You can see our email addresses in the slides, so we will be glad to give you any further information that you may wish to ask.
And we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.